how is it practically possible that you can get a boardroom full of executives, right? Like each with an individual IQ of over 120, and they come together and make decisions with a collective IQ of, I don't know, 63.
Right. It's like the ultimate paradox of human organization, isn't it? You take these brilliant, hyper-capable individuals, put them in a room under pressure, and suddenly the whole group dynamic just, devolves into absolute foolishness.
Yeah, and it happens literally everywhere. You see it at work, you see it in local government, and, well, you see it in massive societal shifts, too. You look at the outcome and you just think, nobody in that room is this stupid individually. So why on earth is the system acting like it is?
Exactly. The system itself becomes the problem.
Right. And today we are going to look at exactly why human systems make brilliant people act, frankly, quite foolishly. Welcome to the Deep Dive. We are exploring the advanced cut of the Diamond framework today, specifically unpacking Chapter 4 from Book 2 of our source text.
And it is a dense chapter, but so rewarding.
Oh, absolutely. Our mission today is to understand what happens when this highly personal theory of human development kind of violently collides with elite MIT business strategy, ancient Arabic symbols, and modern systems discourse.
Yeah, we're taking concepts that on the surface seem, entirely disconnected, like corporate management and sacred geometry. And we're discovering that they map perfectly onto one another. And more importantly, they map perfectly onto our own, internal micro-level landscapes.
Which is the crucial part for you listening right now. We are going to throw around some massive terms today. We're talking systems thinking, energetic frequencies, multidimensional geometric planes.
Sounds like a sci-fi movie.
Right. But none of this is purely academic. Like, if you've ever sat in one of those meetings and just wondered why your team is running in endless circles, or, if you find yourself clinging desperately to old habits when your life is loudly demanding that you change, this deep dive is going to hand you the exact diagnostic tool to understand the mechanics of your situation.
And better yet, how to actually break out of that loop.
Exactly. So to really grasp the mechanics, we have to start at the origin point. The author frames this entire exploration around a very specific, kind of funny moment of realization that happened, decades before the advanced cut was even fully formulated.
Yeah, let's set the scene for that. It's 2002. The author has just conceptualized the original framework.
And for anyone totally new to this, we should probably clarify what the baseline shape even is before we get into the advanced stuff.
Good call. So we're talking about a geometric process cycle visualized as a diamond. Just picture a rhombus on a page. The points on this diamond represent different stages of how we move through life. So you've got setting goals, developing character, executing tasks, and reflecting on the outcomes.
Right.
And at this point in 2002, it's really just a 2D sketch. The author calls it the gray diamond. And he's buzzing with that really youthful, I've just figured out the secrets of the universe energy.
Oh, man, we've all been there. You have this massive epiphany, you map it out on a giant flip chart, and you are just desperate for someone to validate your absolute genius.
Desperate is the word. So his uncle comes to visit. The author brings him into the room, probably entirely ready to deliver this passionate hour-long TED Talk type lecture.
Right.
But the uncle just raises a hand. He stops the author from speaking entirely, and he just stares at this flip chart for 5 whole minutes.
5 minutes. Now, if you've ever stood there waiting for someone to critique your literal life's work, 5 minutes of total silence feels like, a geological era.
It's excruciating. You're just sweating. But it's also this really profound moment of unguided pattern recognition. Because the uncle isn't being spoon-fed the author's bias or his enthusiastic explanations. He's just standing there absorbing the pure architecture of the model.
And after this agonizing silence, the uncle turns to him and simply says, "Fine, Senj, and the 5th discipline."
Which is it's an incredible thing to say,
right?
Because it instantly bridges the gap between this very individual philosophical framework and one of the most rigorous organizational theories of the 20th century.
Except the author has absolutely no idea what his uncle is talking about. Keep in mind, this is 2002. You don't just pull out a smartphone and Google it right there in the room.
No, you have to actually put in the legwork.
Exactly. The author literally has to drive to physical bookstores asking confused salespeople for a guy named Senj until he finally finds an internet cafe, searches the name, and prints out this 15-page article that completely and permanently alters the trajectory of his entire framework.
So for the listener who is sitting in the author's shoes right now asking, who is Senj? We should probably establish the baseline.
Yeah, please do.
So Peter Senj is an absolute titan in the world of organizational management. He was a senior lecturer at MIT, and back in 1990, he published a book called The 5th Discipline.
A huge book.
Massive. To give you a sense of its weight, the Harvard Business Review later named it one of the most important management books in the past 75 years. Senge's entire focus was on this concept of the learning organization. Like, how do companies actually adapt? How do they avoid obsolescence? He basically argued that human organizations are bound by these invisible fabrics of interrelated actions. They aren't just, machines with interchangeable gears and parts.
Right, which makes so much sense. So when the author reads this 15-page printout at the Internet Cafe, he realizes that Senge's 5 disciplines, which are the core tenets of this elite MIT organizational strategy, they map flawlessly onto the points of his Diamond framework.
It's like this validating shockwave for him.
Exactly. It proves that the mechanics required to run a thriving Fortune 500 company and the mechanics required to build a thriving human soul are fundamentally the exact same thing.
Which is wild to think about.
Totally wild. Let's walk through this mapping, because if you don't understand these 5 disciplines, the rest of the advanced cut is just going to sound like gibberish. The first discipline Senge introduces is personal mastery.
Right, and we need to be really careful with that term, because mastery usually implies dominating something.
Right.
Or dominating someone else. But Senge uses it very differently. Personal mastery, in this context, is a special level of proficiency over oneself. It is the discipline of continually clarifying and deepening our personal vision, focusing our energies, developing patience, and seeing reality objectively. It's really about approaching your life the way a master artist approaches a canvas. It requires a relentless commitment to lifelong learning.
Okay, so in the Diamond framework, the author maps this directly to the character facet. It's the stage where you define the next task based on who you actually are. Let's ground this for a second. If you are an employee who just shows up, right? You wait for your boss to hand you a list of tasks, you do them, and you go home. You might be highly productive, but you completely lack personal mastery.
Exactly. You are entirely reacting to external inputs.
Right. Character, in this framework, means your actions are driven by internal clarity. You've learned from past failures, you've refined your skills, and therefore you dictate the next evolutionary step.
That's such a crucial distinction, because without personal mastery, a system cannot generate its own momentum. It can only ever respond to crises. And that actually brings us to Senge's second discipline, which often acts as the biggest barrier to personal mastery, and that is mental models.
Oh, I find mental models so fascinating because they are so insidious. Senge defines these as deeply ingrained assumptions, generalizations, or even just visceral pictures that completely influence how we understand the world and how we take action.
And the scary part is, we are usually completely blind to them.
We don't even know they're running in the background.
Exactly. They are basically the invisible fences around what we believe is possible. Senge often gives very simple examples to illustrate this. Like, if you see a smartly dressed coworker, your brain might instantly run a mental model that says, they're a corporate climber, probably cutthroat, very polished. You've extrapolated an entire personality from a suit.
Or you see someone with a messy desk and a wrinkled shirt, and your mental model just screams they don't care about their job, when in reality, they might be the most brilliant, hyper-focused engineer in the entire building.
Right. It's our brain taking cognitive shortcuts to save energy.
So in the Diamond framework, this maps directly to the phase of reflection. This is where we look at the results of our actions and evaluate them. But, and here's the kicker, if our mental models are flawed, our reflection is corrupted. We evaluate our success or failure based on cultural judgments and past baggage rather than objective reality.
Think about this on a massive corporate scale. Blockbuster had a mental model that people fundamentally wanted the physical experience of walking into a store on a Friday night to pick out a movie. That was an ingrained assumption.
A deeply held one.
Very deep. So when Netflix came along with mail-order DVDs and eventual streaming, Blockbuster's reflection phase was corrupted by their mental model. They looked at the data and said, well, this is a niche fad. It doesn't fit our model of reality.
Which is crazy in hindsight. No amount of new market insight can change behavior if the mental model just rejects the data at the door.
Precisely.
Okay, so we have personal mastery mapping to character and mental models mapping to reflection. This brings us to the third discipline, which actually directly answers the hook we opened the show with. The 63 IQ problem. Senge calls this team learning.
Yes. This is Senge addressing that collective IQ paradox head on. How do individuals with 120 IQs form a group with a 63 IQ? And the answer is pretty blunt. The team is actually learning.
What are they doing then?
Well, they might be debating, they might be compromising, they might be fiercely fighting for turf and budget, but they aren't engaged in collective learning. Senj argues that when teams do learn, and he uses the analogy of a championship sports team or a world-class jazz ensemble, the intelligence doesn't cancel out, it multiplies.
Ah, okay. And the author maps this to the implementation or doing phase of the diamond. This is the actual field of play.
Right. It's one thing to have personal mastery in a vacuum, just sitting alone in a room meditating. It's entirely different when you're under pressure, forced to coordinate real-time action with other human beings who have their own conflicting mental models.
Yeah, that's a whole different ballgame.
Team learning is where the theoretical rubber actually meets the road. If the team hasn't aligned their mental models, they spend all their energy just managing each other's egos rather than executing the task. That's exactly why the collective IQ drops. They're playing internal politics instead of actually playing the game.
Wait, hold on. This leads right into the fourth discipline, and this is where I actually found myself pushing back on the author's interpretation of Senj when I was reading the source text.
Oh, interesting. Where did you get stuck?
So Senj's fourth discipline is shared vision, the capacity to hold a shared picture of the future we want to create. But the author makes a very deliberate, almost surgical alteration here. He completely upgrades Senj's term from a shared vision to a shared mission.
He does, yeah.
And I just thought, why mess with a Harvard Business Review top-tier framework? Is this just semantic window dressing, or is the author arguing that Senj actually missed something critical in his original MIT model?
Oh, it's definitely not just semantics. It's actually a structural critique of how visions function in reality. The author's making a really profound distinction here. Think about it. A vision is just a destination. You can have a shared vision of standing on the summit of Mount Everest. You can all agree the peak looks beautiful. You can paint pictures of it. You can slap it on the corporate brochure in the lobby.
Right.
But a vision does not get you up the mountain.
It doesn't tell you who is carrying the oxygen or what route you're taking up the icefall.
Precisely. In the context of the diamond, which remember is an active spinning process cycle, you need forward movement. You need a structural bridge. So a shared mission absorbs the vision, but it adds the actual action plan, the required individual growth, and the interpersonal harmony necessary to execute.
It implies duty. It implies mechanics.
Exactly. The author is essentially saying that a shared vision without a shared mission is basically just a collective daydream. You need the how-to, not just the where-to.
Okay, I see that. That actually really grounds the corporate speak. Because, everyone has a vision statement, but very few organizations have a living, breathing mission that actually dictates their daily behavior.
Exactly.
So that leaves Senj's fifth and final discipline, the one that titles his book, the one that glues everything else together: systems thinking.
Systems thinking is the realization that we are part of an invisible lacework of interrelated actions. Humans are biologically wired to focus on isolated snapshots of a problem.
Like just looking at what's right in front of us.
Right. We look at the immediate symptom. If sales are down, we fire the sales director. If we have a headache, we pop a pill. We treat problems as entirely linear and isolated, and then we are endlessly baffled when our quick fixes either fail completely or, create 3 new, way worse problems down the line.
We've all done that.
Systems thinking forces us to pull back and look at the full dynamic pattern of cause and effect.
And what I love is how the author visualizes this by changing how we look at the diamond itself. Earlier, we imagined the diamond drawn on a flat piece of paper, right? Top-down 2D. You just see the points of the cycle. But to integrate systems thinking, the author says you have to look at the diamond from a side view.
Yeah, it's a total shift from geometry to topography.
Yeah.
When you tilt that 2D diamond to the side, suddenly you see volume. You realize it's not just a flat cycle, it's a multi-dimensional structure.
You start to see how the different facets of our reality, so politics, economics, the physical environment, and our social milieu, they aren't just separate little boxes, they are interacting simultaneously.
Right. A change in the economic facet instantly pulls on the political facet, which distorts the social facet.
The Senj integration essentially proved that the diamond wasn't just a basic self-help to-do list. It was this interactive, multi-dimensional system. But the author realizes that to fully teach this, to communicate this elite MIT strategy merged with his personal framework, he needs a visual anchor. He needs a symbol that actually represents this new, complex, advanced cut.
And this triggers what I think is one of the most serendipitous, almost unbelievable moments in the entire source text. It's this 21-year delayed realization.
It's totally why. Let's go back to 2002. The author is sitting at his computer late at night typing up an assignment. He clicks on the Insert Symbol tab in his Microsoft Office suite.
Oh, the old word menus.
Right, and he's just scrolling through the wingdings and the foreign characters, and his mouse just happens to hover over an Arabic symbol. It catches his eye. It's an 8-pointed star constructed from 2 overlapping squares with a small circle in the center. And the little tooltip pops up on the screen and simply says, Rub El His.
And he makes a mental note of it because it visually resembles his expanded framework. But he doesn't fully grasp the depth of what he stumbled upon. I mean, it literally takes 2 decades for the true significance of that symbol to unlock the next level of his work.
Let's unpack the symbol itself before we get to that 2020 realization. What actually is the Rub El His?
So, historically and culturally, the Rub El His, which looks like that 8-pointed star, is traditionally used in the Quran. It's a typographic mark used to divide the text into quarters of a section.
Oh, so it's a structural marker.
Exactly. It facilitates recitation and memorization. So at its very core, it is a symbol of division, but also of completeness, rhythm, and this underlying geometry.
And for the author, looking back at this symbol in the 2020s, it becomes the literal map of the advanced cut. The 2 overlapping squares represent the intersecting cycles of reality. It's the visual proof of Senja's systems thinking. It shows how the different planes of our existence actually overlap and interact. But the really obvious question here is, why did it take 21 years? Why did he have to wait until the 2020s to finally understand the mechanics of this advanced cut?
Because you can't truly understand a system until you see it put under ultimate stress. The author describes the year 2020 as a global tipping point. A fulcrum.
He brings in Archimedes here, right? The famous quote, "Give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it, and I shall move the world."
Yes, and what's brilliant is that Peter Senge actually opens the 5th discipline with this exact same quote. It's all about the concept of leverage, finding that specific, highly sensitive point in a massive system where a tiny, focused shift can produce an exponential change.
The author observes that in 2020, the world absolutely did find a fulcrum. A massive global event occurred, the lever was long enough, and the entire world was moved almost overnight.
It was.
But, and this is the absolute core of his systemic diagnosis, it was moved by fear.
And it's crucial here to note the neutrality of systems thinking in his approach. The author isn't making a partisan political statement here.
Right, he's not picking sides.
No, he isn't saying the left did this or the right did that. He is purely dissecting the mechanical flow of energy in a closed system. When a system is driven by top-down scarcity rather than bottom-up personal mastery, the mechanics literally break down. They run in reverse.
I really want to spend a lot of time breaking this down because this concept of the opposing flow explains so much about how our society has felt over the last few years.
It really does.
According to the framework, a healthy system flows in a specific generative direction. It starts with a shared mission, it builds character, executes through team learning, and reflects honestly. It builds upward. But at the 2020 fulcrum, the author argues the entire global system was thrown into reverse. It started running backward.
Yes.
Let's trace the causal links of this opposing flow because it is chillingly accurate when you look at how human behavior globally shifted. The backward flow didn't start with a shared vision. It started in the facet of economics. Specifically, it started with economic scarcity. Now, how does that work mechanically?
Well, when a massive shock hits a system, the immediate reaction of the macroeconomy is self-preservation.
Yeah.
It just contracts. Budgets freeze, supply chains lock down, people start hoarding resources. The primary driver becomes the fear of not having enough, or, for large corporate entities, the desire to protect profits at all costs. Scarcity just becomes the dominant frequency of the entire system.
And according to the advanced cut, this economic scarcity directly dictates the next facet down the line, politics. The flow moves backward into political awareness. Why? Because when resources shrink and panic sets in, individuals naturally feel powerless.
Right, they look up for a savior.
Exactly. They look up to a centralized authority to ration the remaining resources, to protect them, or to create rules to just manage the sudden chaos.
And the wielders of economic influence shape that political policy. In an opposing flow, that political awareness doesn't expand freedom. It restricts it. It masters personal sovereignty. Rules are enacted purely out of emergency and restriction.
So economics drives politics, and then politics violently drives the social sphere. Those new rules, the constant emergency mandates, the narratives broadcasted to justify them, they create a collective social fear. That fear literally becomes our new mental model.
Think back to Senge's mental models, right? If your baseline assumption about the world shifts from, the world is generally safe and cooperative, to every other person is a potential threat to my health or my livelihood, your entire social fabric changes overnight.
Yeah, you stop trusting your neighbors.
Exactly. Anxiety and separation become the lens through which you view every single interaction.
Which finally forces its way down to the very bottom facet, the physical environment. This is the realm of accountability. But in this reversed, opposing flow, the people making the massive scarcity-driven decisions at the top are not the ones held accountable.
No, the public pays the toll. The physical society absorbs the shock of those decisions. You see it in degraded physical environments, failing infrastructure, closed main streets, and burned-out healthcare systems. The physical environment becomes completely stagnant because it is bearing the entire weight of this backward-flowing system.
Then the tragic, inevitable result of this opposing flow, going right back to Senja's third discipline, is the total collapse of team learning. Society, which actually functions as a massive, interconnected team, begins operating at a profoundly low, anxious vibration. That collective IQ drops to 63. Not because people suddenly became stupid, right?
Right, but because you simply cannot have complex team learning when everyone is acting out of individual preservation and fear. Trust is gone, and without trust, learning is impossible.
It's the ultimate failure of systems thinking. When the system operates on the frequency of panic, it totally loses its ability to anticipate or adapt. It can only blindly react to the next immediate threat.
It's like trying to drive a bus full of passengers, but you, the driver, are looking exclusively in the rearview mirror.
That is such a perfect analogy. And not only are you looking in the rearview mirror, but your foot is slammed on the gas because the economic system is demanding that you keep moving at all costs. You are accelerating blindly into the unknown.
Yeah, and meanwhile, all the passengers in the back are shouting completely contradictory directions based entirely on what they are terrified of crashing into.
Right. Watch out for that car we just passed. Watch out for that pothole behind us. Everyone is hyperfixated on the past threat. Nobody's looking out the windshield. And the bus is going 80 miles an hour. It is a systemic recipe for a catastrophic crash.
So the fundamental question the advanced cut asks is, how do you stop the bus? How do you reverse the flow back to a generative direction before the crash?
And the author's answer is that you cannot fix the system from within the exact same dimensional plane that broke it. You have to elevate your perspective. This requires us to understand the dimensional geometry of the framework. We have to move from the three-dimensional red diamond up into the four-dimensional green diamond.
Right, we have to look up.
Walk us through what these colors actually represent, because without the visual, it just sounds like we're playing a board game. What is the red versus the green?
Of course. So imagine the red diamond as the base level. It represents our three-dimensional physical reality. It is the realm of pure mechanics, survival, and material interaction. When you are operating solely in the red diamond, you are just reacting to physical stimuli.
It's all action-reaction.
Exactly. Now, the green diamond is layered above it. It represents a four-dimensional perspective. It introduces time, foresight, and evolution. It's a higher plane of consciousness where you aren't just reacting to what's happening, you are actually anticipating it.
It's the bridge to what the author ultimately calls the blue diamond, which is the divine or the ideal highest state of connection. But making that jump from the reactive red diamond to the anticipatory green diamond, it requires us to drop some seriously heavy baggage. And this brings us to one of the most provocative distinctions in the entire source text.
Oh, yes.
The difference between ritual and ceremony.
This is where the psychology of the advanced cut gets deeply uncomfortable for a lot of people. Because when human beings are dealing with uncertainty like a global fulcrum event, our instinct is to seek safety. We immediately turn to ritual.
The author describes ritual as operating entirely in hindsight, right? It is an attempt to connect to a sense of stability through previous fixed practices.
Yes, and the text goes a step further and links this to a very specific metric. It associates ritual with the energy of pride, vibrating at 175 hertz on Dr. David Hawkins' scale of consciousness.
Now, let's pause here for a second, because if you aren't familiar with Dr. Hawkins, hearing that an emotion vibrates at 175 hertz sounds a bit like, I don't know, New Age pseudoscience. What exactly is this scale?
It's a really important context piece. Dr. David Hawkins was a psychiatrist who developed what he called the map of consciousness. He basically proposed that human emotions and states of awareness have measurable energetic frequencies, and he plotted them on a logarithmic scale from 1 to 1,000. Now, whether you take the concept of hertz literally or view it as a profound metaphor for psychological states, the architecture of the scale is what matters here. According to Hawkins, Anything below 200, which includes emotions like shame, guilt, fear, anger, and pride, is the realm of force and falsehood. It's fundamentally draining energy from the system.
So it takes energy to sustain.
Exactly. Anything above 200, courage, willingness, reason, love, is the realm of power and truth. It generates energy.
So the author is placing ritual at 175. It's below that critical threshold of 200. It is rooted in pride. And in this systemic framework, pride is a limiting frequency. The argument is that getting stuck in tradition, demanding that we do things exactly the way we've always done them, actually stifles evolution. It's a defense mechanism.
Right. We cling to the mechanics of a ritual to preserve a past state of comfort. And in doing so, we entirely disconnect from the original spirit that created the ritual in the first place.
But wait, I have to challenge this. I remember reading this section and I immediately felt my own defenses go up.
Really? How so?
Why is comfort bad? Aren't rituals incredibly valuable? Think about a religious ritual that has survived for centuries, or just a family holiday tradition that brings everyone together, or even a corporate ritual like a Monday morning stand-up meeting that keeps a remote team grounded. Why is preserving the past inherently cast as a low vibration trap? Isn't there immense psychological value in the anchor of tradition when the outside world feels utterly chaotic?
It's a completely natural reaction to defend ritual because, as you said, it provides psychological anchoring. And the author does offer a caveat here, which is important. Ritual does have a place in the early stages of development. It provides necessary scaffolding. The danger isn't the existence of the ritual. The danger is getting stuck in it.
The rigidity of it.
Yes. When the ritual becomes more important than the reality it's supposed to serve, it halts the natural, forward-flowing cycle of the diamond. Think about your corporate Monday morning meeting example. If that meeting was originally established to foster team learning, that's great. But 5 years later, the team has changed, the project has changed, and the meeting is just an hour of people mindlessly reading updates they already emailed each other. Yet management refuses to cancel the meeting because, well, it's our ritual.
Right. They are clinging to the form, but the function is totally dead.
Exactly. It provides an illusion of control in a complex system. When you are terrified of the 2020 fulcrum, you aggressively enforce rituals because you are trying to force the world back into the familiar shape of the past.
It's literally like looking at a photograph of a fire to try and stay warm instead of doing the hard work of gathering wood and building a new fire.
That is precisely why the author champions ceremony as the necessary alternative on the green diamond. Ceremony, in the advanced cut, is fundamentally forward-focused.
How does it differ from ritual in practice?
It is the active celebration of touching the divine, or achieving a higher state of connection in the present moment with an eye on the future. Ceremony embraces flow. It implies adaptation. It acknowledges that the world is changing, and it chooses to celebrate the momentum of that change, rather than resisting it out of fear. Ceremony is dynamic. Ritual is static.
So during a systemic crisis, you cannot solve the problem by moving backward. You cannot ritual your way out of a fundamentally altered reality. You have to use the dynamic, adaptable energy of ceremony to navigate the new terrain.
Exactly right.
Which brings us perfectly to the final piece of the puzzle, this human tendency to cling to comfortable rituals instead of embracing holistic evolution. It's the exact reason why we fail to solve massive global problems. To really illustrate this, the author weaves in the work of a modern systems thinker, Nate Hagens.
Yes, he specifically points to an episode of Hagens' podcast, frankly, episode number 42, where Hagens outlines this concept called running the systems discourse gauntlet.
This gauntlet is basically where the theoretical Senge principles and the geometric diamond framework meet the brutal reality of modern human behavior. Hagens essentially contrasts the flawed traditional way we manage complex problems with the necessary systemic approach. Let's unpack this gauntlet, starting with the left side. What are we doing wrong?
The left side of the gauntlet outlines our default biological and cultural approach to problems. When we are stuck on the left side, our primary directive is preserving the self. We are acting entirely out of self-interest, which maps perfectly to that fear-based opposing flow we discussed earlier.
Furthermore, Hagens points out that on the left side, we live exclusively in the now. We completely ignore the long-term consequences of our actions. We heavily discount the future because our evolutionary biology is wired to care about the tiger in the bushes today, not the climate shifting 30 years from now.
Right. We also focus really narrowly on single pressing issues. We view problems as entirely separate from one another. We treat the economy, public health, energy, and the environment as if they exist on different planets. We try to maximize one metric like GDP without looking at how it degrades the other systems.
It's the ultimate failure of systems thinking. And because we don't understand the system, we demand absolute certainty before taking action. Like, I won't change my behavior until you give me 100% peer-reviewed proof that the sky is falling. And when things do go wrong, what do? We constantly shift blame.
Oh, always.
It's the politician's fault, it's the other generation's fault, it's a foreign country's fault.
And finally, the most passive flaw on the left side, we wait for an external savior. We assume some brilliant scientist in a lab is going to invent a new technology that magically fixes the energy crisis or the pollution problem, so we don't have to change our consumption habits at all.
I read this left side of the gauntlet and thought, this is exactly like putting a piece of black tape over a flashing check engine light on your dashboard.
Yes.
You are preserving your comfort in the now. The annoying red flashing light is gone, and you don't have to spend $1,000 at the mechanic today. But you are entirely ignoring the holistic failure of the vehicle. You are waiting for a magical mechanic to fix it while you drive it at 80 miles an hour until the pistons melt.
That's it, exactly. Because you aren't looking at the system. The right side of Hagen's gauntlet, the systemic approach, requires you to take the tape off and actually open the hood. You have to realize that the engine, the transmission, and the fuel system all interact. A failure in one will eventually destroy the others. The right side demands a holistic, long-term, encompassing, and cyclical view.
And the author beautifully ties this right side of the gauntlet directly back to the 4 A's of his advanced cut framework, which reside up on that 4-dimensional green diamond. To survive the system's gauntlet, we must embody 4 things: awareness, anticipation, abundance, and adaptability.
If you synthesize this entire deep dive, Hagen's gauntlet is the ultimate real-world test of Peter Senge's MIT disciplines. If we rely on the fear-based opposing flow, and if we cling to the rigid rituals of the past, we completely fail the gauntlet. We stay stuck on the left side, pointing fingers and waiting for a savior while the system collapses.
But the advanced cut provides the exact blueprint for moving to the right side. It is the geometric map for transitioning from a competitive, scarcity-driven society into a cooperative, mutually serving one. It is about actively choosing to raise our consciousness from that 175 hertz baseline of pride and fear up into courage, reason, and eventually abundance.
It requires an enormous amount of personal mastery to look at a terrifying, complex, volatile world and deliberately choose anticipation and adaptability over fear and blame. But as the framework mathematically and geometrically demonstrates, it is the only path forward that doesn't ultimately collapse in on itself.
So what does this all actually mean for you, the listener? Let's take a breath and recap the massive journey we just took. We started in 2002, unlocking the geometric diamond framework by integrating Peter Senge's 5 disciplines. We proved that the mechanics of a thriving corporate organization and a thriving human soul are identical.
Then we discovered how the ancient Rub-el-Hiz symbol visually anchors this complexity, transforming a flat 2D process into a 3D systemic volume.
Right, and we analyzed the 2020 fulcrum, exposing how a system driven by economic scarcity runs backward in an opposing flow of fear, which ultimately drops our collective IQ.
We explored the vital psychological necessity of shedding rigid, past-obsessed rituals in favor of forward-looking, adaptable ceremonies on the green diamond.
And finally, we used the advanced cut to navigate Nate Hagen's systems gauntlet, choosing a holistic, long-term approach over narrow, blame-shifting panic.
The most important takeaway is to realize that the advanced cut is not just an abstract geometric theory sketched on a flip chart. It is a highly practical, diagnostic lens for viewing the invisible lacework of your own life. It asks you to genuinely evaluate your immediate reality.
Yeah, are your personal mental models and the way your family or your team at work operates running in a fear-based opposing flow? Or are you actively building an abundance-based cycle of growth?
Are you putting tape over the check engine light, or are you pulling over to open the hood?
The author noted that 2020 was a global fulcrum and the lever moved the world in fear. But remember the Archimedes quote, "Give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it, and I shall move the world." You don't have to wait for a global event. You are the lever in your own life.
It's all up to you.
So what would a personal fulcrum of love or abundance look like for you tomorrow morning? What world could you move if you finally stopped looking in the rearview mirror? Thank you for joining us on the Deep Dive.